All right. Today is a follow-up on the Heimdallr Sea Ghost. This is a watch that I was pretty excited about at first. Some people would, very kindly people, would call this an homage to the Omega No Time to Die Seamaster. Others would call it a Chinese knockoff. I call it a cheap lesson learned on the difference between an $8,000 luxury watch and a very pretty but very broken $230 watch. I knew it was low risk. Seriously, like a nice dinner out with my family is gonna cost me more. The watch is Chinese made, but it uses the Seiko NH35 movement. It's got a sapphire crystal. It's got a really nice band. Then I noticed we had a problem. When I tried turning the bezel for the first time, I noticed that it was really hard to rotate. The bezel was completely bound up. I did some research and I didn't see that this was a specific problem identified with other Heimdallr Sea Ghosts. I knew going into this that other folks had some challenges returning their Heimdallrs because some AliExpress shenanigans, right? So Heimdallr, the company, ended its relationship with AliExpress, but then some third-party buyers started to buy up all their product and reselling those watches on AliExpress. Heimdallr then set up their own website, and this was again all about warranty, right? So then some gray market folks copied that website. It was a huge mess. So knowing that I bought it from AliExpress, I knew the return process would just be craptastic. So I decided to play around with this myself and try to fix it. So I went online, I checked out some forums, and they recommended fixing a bound up bezel by lubricating it with WD-40. So I gave it some lube, I let it sit, and as you can tell, no joy. I tried some other brands of lube. I could feel that it wasn't grit and it wasn't friction, it was completely bound up. And the more I tried to rotate it, just the harder it got to rotate. Like I've only been able to rotate this maybe, I don't know, 5 times. It's gone around 5 times and now it's completely stuck. And I learned it could be a bent spring or the gasket could be bound up. And to fix that, you need to remove the bezel. So I had a couple of old non-functioning watches sitting in my collection and I decided to do some experimenting. I also expanded my tool watch in the process. First thing I did is I busted out this old Citizen Eco Drive diver and it had a gummed up bezel. I placed some tape on the sides to protect the metal, and then I used a bezel removal wedge and the bezel popped right off. Bezel comes off, got a little spring clip in here, got another spring clip right in here. That is the spring that allows the clicking on the bezel. After making sure the bezel is properly lined, my spring is in place, gaskets are in place. I place this carefully in my vise, the clamp, I apply pressure, and it will seat. There we go, just like that. Bezel's back in place. So, feeling confident after removing the bezel off of this old Eco Drive, I followed the same procedure on my Heimdallr. I added some tape, I used a wedge, and no joy, that bezel would not come off. And I managed to gouge several nice deep scratches into the case and the bezel. I also wound up breaking the tip off of an ABS plastic wedge and 2 of my metal wedges. So I did some research and I found out that some watches have a specific price spot with a small hole to insert a wedge or between the bezel and the case. So I busted out my magnifier and found no little holes, no indents, nothing to start the pry from. So the next step was a little bit more YouTube research. I found a better tool. It uses 4 pry wedges and a vise, and these wedges are screwed into the gap, helping to remove that bezel. It was $20 on Amazon Prime. 2 days later, I had a new tool and I was super confident. I was gonna pop that bezel right off and figure out if it was a spring or maybe there's the rubber gasket sometimes in there that can bind up. And that's gonna fix this bad boy. So before tinkering on the Sea Ghost, I grabbed my cheap Pulsar diver and threw that into the vise. I put some tape on the edges, and tell you what, it popped off quicker than it took to unwrap this from the Amazon box. So I cleaned up the bezel, I dropped some lube onto the gasket, and it just went on easy peasy. So I grabbed my Sea Ghost, put some more tape on it, dropped it into the vise, and over the next 15 minutes, I learned that 4 wedges make 4 times the gouges, and still does not remove the bezel. I'm not worried about the scratches. I know I could remove the gouges, polish out the case, but the bezel has been nagging me. I wanted it to rotate. Fortunately, the bezel did stop right at the 12 o'clock. I don't think I have OCD, but damn, having that bezel off the 12 o'clock position when I'm not timing something would have bugged the crap out of me. So honestly, I am not upset. It was a cheap watch. It was a valuable lesson. What was the takeaway? Did I stop buying those no time to die homages? Nope. I have a Pagani design I bought for about the same amount of money. It works fine. It looks great. I've had no problems with that watch. So, did I stop buying from AliExpress? Nope. In fact, I've got this badass looking 19 Zwan coming soon. I can't wait to get that watch and review it. Did I at least learn not to take my watches apart? Well, negative. Since I bought all these tools, I have been tinkering with all sorts of watches. But honestly, none of them have taken the damage that this Heimdallr has. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that this is grade 3 titanium, which is pretty soft. So, having spent $230 on the watch, $50-ish on the tools, and really not being successful at repairing or removing this bezel and just damaging it even more in the process, will I keep tinkering with these budget watches and experimenting? Hell yeah. The real lesson I learned is if I ever do buy a $9,000 Omega and the bezel gets a little gummy, I will be patient. I'm going to take it into an authorized Omega repair shop for service. And again, like I said in the original video, this is a cheap, low-risk watch. If it's garbage, and it is garbage, it's not a big deal. I'm going to play with it. I'm going to have fun. In fact, this is the watch I put on to bang around in the garage. When I'm working on cars, when I'm painting, when I'm just doing stuff that I scratch up watches with. This legitimately is the best watch for that because it's already scratched. And I don't care if it gets banged up even more. So, if you are looking at buying a Heimdallr, think of it as a fun, disposable watch. It's not something that will become a family heirloom. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And yeah, if you've got a Heimdallr, just wear it like you stole it.